Boys, how are you all doing?
MT,
Boys,
we're
Before we
back.
started this, before we pressed record, I said, "Hey guys, I'm just gonna go toilet first," and then we all went, "Yeah, I gotta go toilet too." So we all went to the toilet.
Simultaneously.
Does that make us best friends?
We are best friends.
We're
pretty
all best
much.
friends too?
If we were here in person, I would have sword fighted you both. But but actually, I've already seen Scotty in the flesh today. I've already been down to Powerhouse.
This is
As,
true. I've been graced with
as
your presence.
some of you have seen on my story. But I think what everyone wants to know is Friday night, last Friday.
Oh,
We didn't talk about it.
first Suvo, Scotty.
Oh, run us
Tell-
Big
down,
deal.
guys. Run it down.
Yeah,
Go
pop
give
my
us.
cherry. Honestly, I was a little bit skeptical. I'm like, is it really going to be worth a hype? But it was pretty good, man.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah, a lot of people who watched the clip that MG uploaded, they were like, was it really good or were you just saying? I was like, honestly, it was really good.
Yeah.
Bro,
Super clean. Part of me was a bit worried it was going to be really heavy and dense, but it just wasn't. And the pitter, like we were asking the guy, where do you get these from? It's the best pitter I've ever had in my whole life.
the gluten-free pita, yeah.
Yeah. It was unreal. And it was just the right amount of
Everything.
tomato, the tzatziki. It was just, the only issue that we had is that we probably should have ordered 2 or 3 more.
Yeah,
The size.
we could have smashed them.
Yeah.
I'm glad
No,
you
it was
loved it, man. I
good.
was worried.
It
I
was
was
good.
glad you loved it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Scott, I
And,
think everyone wants to hear you say in your best Italian accent. What did you have after the sumo?
the cremosito.
Hey, you remembered.
Hey.
Yeah,
Cremosito.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for anyone who's listening who doesn't know what a cremosito is, it's like a coffee, but almost like a
Moose.
mixture between a mousse and an ice cream. But
Yeah, moussey ice cream. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just comes out of like one of those dispensing machines, like a Mr. Whippy, and it's a post.
It is one of those things,
lunch.
though. Like, I remember eating it, you do savor it, but as you go on and you start talking, like, towards the end, like, for me, it was starting to get pretty sweet. Like, it was starting to, do you know what I mean? Versus MG was pretty much like, bring me out a jug.
Oh, he
Yeah, I
he
could
had like
just
a triple shot.
I
Yeah.
could just
Yeah.
go nuts. Hey, can I just show you this? This is the best. You'll love this.
What is it?
This is a message from Scott. Hey MG, what was the name of that coffee that we had after Supers on Friday night? So I sent him a
Do you,
screenshot picture of Cremosito.
Cremosito. Do you know what? Like, because I was telling Jen, I'm like, I had this coffee, like, dessert thing. 'Cause she's like, oh, did you have anything? I'm like, no, I just had this coffee thing. But honestly, it was incredible. Such a nice palate cleanser. It was
She's like a
unbelievable. She's like,
connoisseur.
what's it called? And I started Googling all these weird fucking coffee desserts and I couldn't find it. I'm like, I'm going to have to message him and ask.
Yeah.
And I knew it had a really cool, like a little Italian zing to it. And then he sent it to me. And yeah, I know Jen, she's itching to go there now.
so for anyone
Okay.
that doesn't know, you can buy them at Mama Lena's in Essendon, which if anyone knows me, it's the place that I pretty much go every single Friday night. So no
Yeah.
stalking, please. But that's where you get it from. You can only get it from select places. It's like a specialized Italian thing. It only gets imported to a certain company in Melbourne, and then they only distribute it to certain cafes. And I think there's only maybe 1 or 2 cafes in Melbourne that actually have it. So you have to go to Mama Lena's in Essendon to get it.
And it's elite.
It's elite. Yeah, it's elite.
And it's gluten free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about coffee, I've got a question because, I'm making my morning coffee. So when you're making your instant coffee, because we're all PTs and we all make instant coffee to get us going in the morning most of the time, right? Because we just need a shot of caffeine. So when you make your instant coffee, you obviously put the coffee in the cup, right? The instant coffee in the cup. Now, do you put in the milk first, then the hot water, or do you put hot water then the milk on top?
No, you don't put the milk in first, man. That is outrageous.
What do you do, Scotty?
Scott doesn't have any
Well,
milk.
I don't have any milk in my coffee.
If
But
you want
if
to
I
have milk,
make, no, I don't have milk. But if I'm making it for someone, so when I do, I put the milk in first and I cream up the coffee, then I pour it
What
in.
the fuck, man?
okay.
That is-
So someone told me to put milk in first, and their reasoning is legit. If you put the milk in first, it cools the coffee down, the coffee beans. It protects the coffee bean, so you don't
Mhm.
burn the coffee with the hot water as you pour it in. right?
Mhm.
So you don't have burnt coffee. But I never make it that way, but I have in the past. I was like, it actually makes a difference.
My whole life has
Do you
been a
find it
lie.
better?
It actually yeah, it's better. It is
Yeah,
actually
that's what I hear.
yeah.
No, I drink my instant coffee neat.
So MG, milk first, then hot
Yeah.
water. Protect the coffee, protect
I'll
it.
do it. Well, you could have fucking told me before I had this one here. All right, tomorrow morning I'll do a story.
You gotta let us know.
I'll give you my feedback. I wish you watch it. It'll be fucking like Scott having his first survey. It'll be the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I'll be so fucking pissed. I've wasted 20 years.
I've been doing it wrong for all this time.
Actually, okay, if we're talking about like life-changing things that you wish you knew earlier, I had another life-changing thing last week. So it was super hot here, right? Went to the beach a couple of times. I bought a cabana, right? For the first time ever bought a cabana. I was like, this is too hot. I can't do this. I need some shade. I need some, rescue. Whenever I want to get out of the sun, I can go somewhere. So I bought a cabana. Game changer.
Yeah, see,
Beach,
Scott's probably got one because he's got
changer.
kids.
Oh,
Mhm.
it is the best thing I've ever done. It made the beach.
Yeah.
What's
way
the
more
measurements?
pleasurable.
What's the size?
2 meters by 2 meters. It was about $190. It's from
Setup
Cool
time?
Cabanas. Yeah.
Setup time?
Online. You can buy it BCF. You can buy it a couple of places as a walk-in, or you can buy it online.
Yeah, so what is it, 4 pegs?
It's literally like a umbrella, and then the 4 sides have these dangling pieces that go all the way to the sand that then you fill with sand to pull it down. It's like
So is it just an instant pop-up? Like,
instant pop-up in the middle, and then the 4 pieces on the side, you fill it with sand, it pulls it down so it stays nice and sturdy. Game changer. Thank me later.
I'll investigate. Now, Maybe and I were actually talking about getting one just this summer, so you've sold me. That's 2 things you've sold me on today. Keep going, keep going.
That's all I got.
got?
That's all I got.
Hey, maybe this.
We should probably start talking about some prep stuff.
I was going to say, just get all the listeners. Send us in your life hacks.
Yeah, life hacks.
Yeah, send us in your life hacks.
Okay,
And
life
then
hacks
and then
every
we'll
episode.
we'll try them all, and then
Yeah.
we'll review a couple each episode.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
mad.
last thing, Scotty. So before Suvo's on Friday, you came to my house, right? We all met up at my house. You looked in my fridge. I said, Coach, look in my fridge, right? How was it?
It was immaculate. There was some containers and there wasn't much else.
Yeah, it's pretty much eggs. There's some prepped meals in there, and there's some water, and there's some eggs, and there's some other stuff.
That was pretty much it.
Yeah.
But to be fair, you were like, I've got to do a shot, but the meals were there. They were listed.
Hey, and also to be fair, Scott and I got to hold the spatch and the
That was my
pan.
next thing.
Uh,
The spatch.
Yeah, I just want to say that spatch is fucked up, man.
The
That
spatch is
thing,
fun.
that thing has been. Was you got like electrical tape around the handle, like
Yeah, he's got
it's an old vintage cricket bat or something.
Yeah, the spatch has been burnt on the handle so many times that I've had to use electrical black tape to keep it together. But someone sent me a post today and saying, you're an adult when, and then there was 5 things listed. Guess what number 4 was? You have
You
a
used duct tape
spatula.
spatula.
You have a favorite spatula. I know I'm an adult now because I have a favorite.
Hey, can I buy you a new one?
No, I've got new ones.
Can I buy you a real special one?
I've got them, man.
Can you throw it in? Can you throw it in the bin on one of the podcasts?
No, it's not. It's not happening.
Come on, man. You can do
Do
this.
you ever cycle your pans like every year we get a newie, or is that just?
No, once I find a good pan, I'm keeping it until.
But it doesn't. But I'm saying, like, say you're cooking egg whites and it's just completely fucked.
Yeah. No. Like if it's
So
the
what's the,
non-sticky's gone and it's not cooking properly, it's out.
Yeah.
But once I find one good pan, I'm keeping it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just running it into the ground.
Clearly.
Cook it, yeah, run it till its life ends. Yeah, I'm with you.
All right, let's start some prep stuff. So let's start on this one because I think this is going to be a good little discussion. So we've got a question. If a pro in a natty fed decides to compete in another fed as an amateur, do they forfeit that pro card? So I don't know, and we won't get into actual federation names, but you know what that means by that, right? So Scotty, you have a pro card in a federation. If you wanted to compete in another federation that you're not a pro in, do you forfeit your current pro card? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think so, because I know what it takes to win that pro card. And I don't think, without going into the federations, I think there are, within natural bodybuildings, like there are perhaps some federations where if you have a pro card within that realm, it's viewed as perhaps like, I'm just going to say I have an ICM pro card. So I would view that as the highest level on par with WMBF in terms of being a natural physique athlete and being a pro. And also knowing that you've got to win an Australian title. I had to win an Australian title. You've got to beat everyone else in the country to win that. So they're pretty hard to go and get. So to just give that up to compete in another federation, like I'm going to do an IFBB show this year. If they said to me, you've got to give that up if you're going to go and do an IFBB show, it would probably deter me from wanting to do that show. Because I know I wouldn't, because then essentially, I wouldn't have any issues if I had to go back to the start again and compete as an amateur and to try and win it again. I don't have any issues if I was having to do that, but it's more if you feel that perhaps you're at a level where you should be competing with other pros who are at that level, then that's where you should be competing in. And I personally wouldn't want to give that up, and I don't think you should need to, because if you were crossing over to another federation, if I was to compete in another federation as a pro, as an ICM pro, but in a federation as an amateur, it wouldn't really feel right to me. It's almost like, you're not to put yourself on a level above others, but you're perhaps playing in a field that you perhaps shouldn't be in the sense. It's like grade sixes playing with preps.
Okay. So
not to that, and again, not to try and sound arrogant, but more just you're not really comparing apples with apples. So instead, I would say, why don't you then just, if you're an ICM pro, you can go and do that pro show. Now, if you don't win, you don't get a pro card. And I'd have no qualms in them saying, if you want to be a pro in our federation, you've got to win our pro show, not come second. You've got to beat everyone. And I would have no qualms with that. So if I didn't win, then that's okay. I'll stay as an ICM pro, but I'm not a pro in your federation because I didn't win your, whatever it is, the highest level that you need someone to win, because that's how you validate your level of being a pro.
Okay.
And if anything, if I didn't, it would probably make me more determined to want to go back and get to that point, because if you just fell short, or if that level, that standard is higher than what you're accustomed to, then it would be like, then that's the level I want to get to because I want to get better.
Okay, so let's let's play this scenario out a little bit more, and let's not use ICN and IFBB because they're a little bit different, right? So let's just use all the natural feds as the similarities, right? They're all very, very similar. Let's just call it that, right?
Yeah.
So you're ICM pro. If you were to jump into another natural federation, which is multiple, right? You'd rather, in your scenario you're just giving now, you'd rather jump into their pro show, not their amateur show, and in their pro show, having to win, place a top placing, whatever that may be, whatever the rule they bring up, right? For you them to obtain their pro card too. You'd rather that because you wouldn't want to compete against the amateurs, because yes, you're a pro, so therefore you should be better than all the amateurs, you would think, and you don't want to really just take an opportunity off someone else. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, basically. And again, if I didn't win, depending however many in the lineup, but if they were like, say there was 5 in the lineup and you came third and we're like, we're going to give you a pro card and whatever. If I'm brutally honest, I probably wouldn't. I don't even reckon I would maybe accept it, because I would be like, if I didn't at least win or come second out of everyone else, then I'm obviously just not at that level to want to accept that. That's just me personally, because I'm competitive and I wouldn't view that I don't give a shit about having the label. I'm a pro in that federation. I would want to have earned it all the way. So if all of the other guys had to earn it by winning their overall, like I know I have to earn my ones within my current federation, I would want to have that same feeling. Otherwise, for me, like, I don't care about the status. Like, there's a lot of people who love having it in their bio and I'm an IC. I don't care about any of that. For me, it's just knowing that what you put your body through and what you're willing to encounter to earn that specific pro card, that is what is worth weight to me. Okay, so I've got another question for you then. If you weren't a pro in any federation, right, and you knew that a federation had a rule that said, if you become a pro with us, you forfeit that pro card if you go to another federation to do an amateur show, would you even try to compete in that federation to start off with? Or do you just rule that federation out? So let's say when I first started, because I've only ever competed with one federation, if I was deciding to do some of the other feds as well as that, and then that was their rule, and let's say that I was fortunate enough to win it, would I then want to go and do another show?
No, so would you? So say here's 3 federations, Scotty. Right? Here's 3, but this one here, if you become pro in it, you'll have to forfeit your pro card if you try to do another federation. Would you even try to start in that federation at all? Would you go, no, Rob, just do the other 2?
I'd probably, it's hard to say because, to be honest, if I wanted to do the other 2 and then I won my pro card in that and then they're like, you can't compete in there or you're for that, I'd be like, well, I just won't be a pro in your federation, because I would be also looking down the line, where am I? Because this is the thing, as a pro, once you do turn pro, it's not like you can just do any show you want, and it does limit you in terms of when you compete, because you've got to try and find pro shows that you can do. There's a few more overseas, but you are a lot limited to when you are. So I would look and be like, well, if you guys only have 1 pro show a year and I could go in another federation and I can do 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever, then I'm probably more inclined to do that. But it would potentially deter me from, if I thought that I was at that level where I was going to be contending, then maybe I would be like, well, then what's the point if I'm going to do it and then I'm going to go into another federation anyway, because that's what I've got my heart set on doing, then it's probably just a waste of money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I tend to agree with you, and I'd probably have the same thought pattern as you, to be honest. And even as a coach, putting clients, the first scenario about if you're already a pro, I wouldn't want to put my really good pro client in an amateur show in another federation that's of similar competitiveness, if you want to call it that. So like I wouldn't chuck a Candace or a Bridget, right, in an amateur sports lineup of another federation. I just think that would be unfair to all the other people in that lineup. Yeah.
Especially, I think, if you're looking at someone, like, say, for example, someone who's won pro shows as well. Like, you look at someone like Bridget who's won a pro show.
Mm-hmm.
And again, as someone who's been fortunate enough to do that, you just, as an athlete, I don't think you would feel right wanting to do that. Like, it wouldn't. It's different, I think, if you feel like if all you care about is just winning and you'll beat whoever, then maybe. But again, I think it comes down to, like, what weight does that hold for you to do that?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And for me, yeah, like I said, it wouldn't really matter. And I don't think you should be limited to do that, just because I think, if anything, it would potentially, like, hinder your ability to perhaps grow and expose more people. You know, if I was at one of the other federations, I'm not saying that they would want me, but they might want a Bridget or a Candace or someone of that caliber to come and do their pro show, because it's like, this is where we're at. These are top tier athletes, and if they're coming to do our show, then our show must be, you know, really, really good. And if they don't win that pro show, then perhaps all it's saying is that then maybe our level of pros is even higher than perhaps what everyone originally thought. So it gives you a bit more weight behind the caliber of your federation. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. I see more positives in letting people have the freedom than negatives, to be honest. Yeah. Yeah,
and I get why perhaps some people may want to do that, because I guess essentially you're like say if ICN did that to me, and that's their way of just saying you're staying with us, you're not leaving. Yeah. But if I was a pro in the other feds, NBA, AMB, whatever that one over in Perth is, I forget what it's called, I wouldn't be like, I'm only doing the ICN pro shows. I'd be like, okay, if there's a pro show here, I'll look at that, then I'll look at that one, then I'll look at that one, and I would probably do them all, provided that the date's lined up.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be just like, and even now, I'm not like, I'll only ever, like I said, I'm going to do an IFBB show, and I'm not like, I'll only ever do ICN. I'm going to look at the WNBF show that they're going to have in Queensland, and if I decide to do that, I'll be doing that as an amateur.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they don't recognise ICN pro status, I don't believe.
Yeah, so again, like, it's up to federation rules, right? You might want to go, well, I really like to do your pro show, guys, because I don't want to compete against other amateurs because I feel like I'm competitive enough to do a pro show. But if they don't allow you, then they don't allow you. It's like, sometimes
Is that their rule? I think that is their rule, isn't it?
It probably is. I'm just guessing. I'm just making that up as a scenario.
I don't reckon it is, because I know even when Brandon, I know when he went over, he had to do their amateur show because he went over there to try and get his pro card.
Mhm.
But again, the standard over there for those guys, I mean, look at someone like, B, who's elite over here. He won our ICM Pro title back in 2019, and he didn't win his pro card over in WNBF. Like, you're talking about some of the guys. There's a lot of people over in the US and in Europe that go to do those shows that we probably don't get to see, and natural bodybuilding over there is pretty hectic. There's some pretty scary physiques.
Yeah, definitely.
So and I would totally respect that. If they were like, to be honest, I don't even reckon I would ask that, because if that's just their process, they're like, this is how we do it. If you want to be a pro with us, then you've got to, and even to get to their WMBF Worlds, you've got to be top whatever and qualify. I don't have any issues with that, because that's their process.
Yep.
So yeah,
I think the key thing in that question was really about the forfeiting component of it. Yeah, which I think we covered that pretty good.
Yep.
Okay, let's change it. Totally different spin. Let's go to an exercise question, because I've actually seen this trend too, and this person's asked this question. So, which is better, Smith machine hip thrust compared to barbell, and Smith machine RDL compared to barbell? So comparing the Smith machine with the barbell, right? So I know I program both of them, a Smith machine and barbell, depending on the program, depending on the variation, depending on the client. But if we try to think, okay, well, what is the biggest difference between the two? The Smith has a fixed bar path, right? The bar can only go up and down the way it wants it to go up and down. Some of them are on an angle, some of them are straight, whatever that may be. And also a Smith is a lot more stable, right? Because the weights from either side can't rock. It's stable. It's straight up and down, and it's fairly stable. So it's more of a stable movement with a locked-in bar path, whereas the barbell is less stable and the bar path isn't locked in, right? It's up to you to control those two components. So I can see how on a hip thrust, for instance, traditionally, even when someone's doing it with a barbell, the bar path is pretty fixed. I mean, like, if I was to look at someone doing a hip thrust from side on and just look at the bar, it pretty much goes straight up and down. There is a little bit, it does swing back towards the person, towards the top, just because of the leverage and where their knees are bending, where their hips are bending, where their feet are placed on the floor and things like that. But you'll find that it'll either be really straight up and down, or it will be slightly towards you. But I think if it was locked in, it wouldn't make much of a difference, to be honest, as long as you positioned yourself in the right way. The only one you're going to find is when the Smith machine is on an angle. That's going to be that's going to be more of a tricky one. You'd probably want to angle it coming back towards you, instead of, as the bar comes up, it goes away from you when you're doing the hip thrust, right? So it comes back towards you. And then if we look at the stability component, okay, so the glutes keep the hips stable. So if you're using the Smith machine, maybe you're getting less stability out of the glutes, but the glutes can drive harder because they don't have to worry about stability. Whereas with the barbell, it has to worry about driving up plus stability. So you could argue that point is it's less stable on a barbell, so therefore it might recruit more of the glutes potentially. But then on a Smith machine, because you don't have to worry about stability, maybe you can lift more. So there's probably a debate for both of those, to be honest. And then the same is with the RDL, right? So with the RDL, having a fixed barbell, a bar path, is very interesting. Like, just the feel of it, if you ever done an RDL on a Smith, it's almost like you can pull back against the bar and almost like pull your body weight back and really thrust your glutes through on the movement. Whereas you can't do that on a barbell bites. You'd fall over if you tried to swing back and lean back. You would fall over, right? So I think there's a little bit of a activation difference between the Smith and the barbell in an RDL. I think you can almost get more glute out of it with the Smith because you can thrust against the bar path, whereas with the barbell you can't thrust against the bar path. If that makes sense. but it's obviously not fixed. The stability component, I think it's not really a factor because you're gripping the bar. Hopefully, you're gripping it evenly, right? And I've never felt that in a RDL that I have to fight the stability of the bar, like the bar is rocking side to side. I've never felt that. With the thrust, I could see some people may not thrust directly straight up, so they might find that they have to fight the stability. But I've never seen someone like super unstable, like left to right, with like a seesaw action with an RDL. What do you boys think? Like, I program them both. I think they should be both included. It's like, what's better, dumbbells or barbell? Just do both, right? But what do you guys think about those like components that I mentioned? And is there any other components that I'm missing?
No, look, I definitely agree with what you said. Definitely programmed Smith barbell a little more than RDL. I can't say really programmed Smith RDL. I think the Smith machine cops a lot of slack, and I think it's a very useful tool. And I'll elaborate a little bit on that in a minute. In terms of the hip thrust, sometimes I can program a Smith because of convenience too, right?
Mm-hmm,
The ability just to throw plates on without having to balance the other side out. You don't need a clip, and the getting out of it is a lot easier. So I've used it for that in instances, maybe more so than for anything else. I think the thing to think about is, again, it's individualized, and a big thing that's going to come into play is obviously limb length. So like, someone who's got, a short femur and a long tib fib or vice versa, it can be useful, again, because of the setup and getting the bar off the ground and then not causing that seesaw action to happen. I can definitely see what you're saying in terms of the ability to drive the hips further back and pull back against the bar on an RDL, because you're not going to fall over, right? Because you're holding on to something. So you can send the hips back further and then have the ability to drive through further because you then don't have to balance again on the way up. But like the Smith in general is like a really useful tool. And I think it comes down to a lot of like risk versus reward again. So like if you look at, say, a lot of my pressing movements, I've got a lot of my team doing a lot of the pressing on the Smith when, for the guys, a lot of flat Smith pressing and incline Smith pressing, when yes, they could be using barbells, but the ability to load the chest tends to be greater. And at the end of the day, I don't have athletes coming to me saying, hey, I want to be the best bench presser in the world. That's not the goal. The goal is to induce as much hypertrophy as possible. So I just feel I can get a greater result using a Smith machine for a lot of these athletes than I can on an actual barbell, or in some instances a dumbbell as well. Yeah. So I think they are a useful tool. I don't think I would just program them on Smith all the time forever, because there's definitely a lot to be said for having a setup where you have a really good amount of stability and are constantly forced to stabilize. But I don't think that you need to only work with barbells and dumbbells. I think the Smith machine is a great tool. But yeah, definitely use it. But for me, it's probably more been a convenience thing than a specific setup thing. Yeah,
I found that too. If clients ever say to me, hey, do I have to do barbell thrust? Can I do Smith? I know they're asking that question from a setup perspective. Yeah. So then my answer would be is yes, as long as you're honest with yourself that it feels the same and you get the same amount of activation in the glutes as you would in a barbell. Be honest with me. Don't just be lazy, right?
Yeah.
So then I'll be okay with it. But I think they're more interchangeable, the thrust on the Smith or the barbell, than the RDL. Because I think the RDL, as I said, you can pull back against it. It's a completely different feel.
And it would be. And if you've never done that, I could imagine that would feel super different. And then there's the other thing, like not all Smith machines go all the way to the floor.
Exactly.
So like the one at my gym, you couldn't hip thrust on it.
Yeah, it's too high. The bottom position.
It's too high. The bottom's too high. So that's another factor. And you touch on it just in that sentence you said before. It's really about having a hard conversation with the athlete and saying like I can't feel your connection to the muscle when you're working it. I can see your form, and sometimes form can look good, but you can do a hip thrust and then come up and say, oh, I really just got a shitload in the adductor, or I got a lot in the quad as well. And it's like, but the form looks really good as a coach, right? So, you may adjust a foot position or something. So sometimes it's just really about being honest about how much connection you have. And if you feel that you can do a Smith machine hip thrust, load it easier and get an amazing connection with your glutes, you finish the set, you're totally cooked in the right areas. As a coach, I'm all for that. Like, I'm not going to say you have to barbell hip thrust because it's Instagram cool at a barbell hip thrust. Well, there's potentially better avenues. But I will say that I've found a lot of clients have you guys have seen the booty builders, like the thrust machines. What sort of feedback do you guys get from your team on those?
It's honestly mixed. For myself personally, whenever I've used a hip thrust machine, I thought they were the worst thing ever. Like, I didn't feel any activation. The setup wasn't right. It just didn't feel right. I was just like, no, this is rubbish. This is absolute rubbish. I felt like I was just heaving against the machine up. I wasn't getting like with the hip thrust, you're supposed to get that like kind of that rolling action with your hips and that hip flick and actually squeezing the glutes through, and not just like, because thrust is even a bad word. I wasn't just thrusting or throwing the bar up. You should actually be like, I don't know what
it should be as almost like that weight was attached to the hip as one piece, right?
Yeah, you're driving through the glutes and you're squeezing the glutes and the pelvis kind of rolls around, right? Whereas with the machine, I just felt like it was just all attached to me and I was just throwing the weight up in the air to get it up. But then I've had some clients feel the same way, and some clients were like, nah, it just feels way better than anything I've ever done. And I feel the most in my glutes. I'm like, well, if that's your honest answer, then that's what we're going to go.
And the reason I ask is because I would say that about 75% of my team who use it want to get rid of it pretty quickly.
The machine? Yeah. I agree. It's more people don't like it than actually do.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the machine too. Like, a lot of them, as you said, are mechanically the way they're put together. I know that the hammer strength glute drive, I've used lots of different ones, and that's probably the only one bang for buck wise that I think it's most people that I know who use it will find that you get a pretty good stimulus. But for a lot of them, like you said, I think everyone's muscular architecture is going to be different. Like I said, if you've got longer femurs and you don't have great mobility in the ankles of the knees, sometimes the platforms you have your feet on aren't the same. Whereas if you're setting up a barbell or a Smith, you can make that fit your physique structure by any means. So,
yeah. And we'll throw it around the room. Like I barbell. You both barbell for say hip thrust and RDL?
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. I've never done a Smith RDL. I like the Smith hip thrust. I think a lot of the times you can load perhaps a little bit more on that, and having a little bit more stability on that eccentric phase when you're lengthening the muscle can sometimes allow for a little bit more time under tension. Find that when I'm real big on tempo when my athletes are doing hip thrust, because you can see a lot of just down quick, up fast, rather than just, being very methodical with your timing. So if it's a 2-second negative, it's nicely controlled, because again, you might have someone who's trying to move 3 plates, but your range of motion is like that, and it's just going up, down, and you're not getting that control and stability. Then again, it goes back to, are you moving the load from point A to point B, or you're actually trying to distribute stress evenly? So sometimes you'll pull back their weight by even 50%. You get them to follow an honest tempo. You get them to squeeze. Again, if they need to add a band so they get a bit more external rotation, then by all means do that. And then straight away, it's a game changer.
Yeah. I'd recommend you give it a shot, Scotty, the Smith RDL. See what you think. Yeah.
I think the only reason I probably haven't is just, without having done it, I would think perhaps would you lose some of that loading tension coming through, because as you're pulling to lock out, you're pulling against those rods, and so would that take out some of the loading on it, because obviously you're pulling back, so you'd be taking out on some of that force, versus if you've got a barbell, you've got 4 plates, it's 180 kilos on the way up, it's 180 on the way down. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, you're 100% right.
Only on that hip tension on the lockout.
Yeah, you're right. It can't replace it. It's just a different variation. So you're right, because literally you could put heaps of weight on it and just lean back and just lean your whole body weight back, and it'll bring the bar up, right?
But then I guess on the other side, you could employ a slower tempo eccentrically, so you could keep that load on a way down.
Yes.
Kind of like using chains or bands, and then you've got some assistance as you're locking out, you're pulling back. So you might be pulling a 200 or leveraging that load on the way down, and it might only be like 160 on the way up. So in some ways, mechanistically, that could also be advantageous as well.
Yeah, definitely give it a shot. See what you think.
Yeah, well, I'll have to have a play with it.
100%. I actually, just even on that point, I sometimes give like B stance, stacked stance, or even single leg RDL on the Smith, right? So they can really train that hammy and that glute, but still have a little bit of stability in it and pull back on it, if that makes sense. So I program that in too, which is a really good variation to jiu-jitsu. Yeah, for sure. Okay, talking about training, we got some pre-workout questions, right? So the first one, which I've never done, because I'm not very big pre-workout person, but someone said, having a pre-workout scoop chased by a pre-workout carbonated drink, right? Now, I don't know what a pre-workout carbonated drink is, but I'm assuming it's
like a bang. It's like a bang or a,
okay.
like that, like the Freak or just a can of. It's almost like it's like a Monster, but they've got citrulline, they've got beta alanine in them, they've got sometimes a little bit of potassium, a few other bits and pieces. So essentially, what you're doing is you're having 2 scoops.
Okay, yeah, because they said, is that too much? And I was like, I've got to ask the boys. Yeah. So it's essentially having 2 scoops.
2 scoops. Well, it just depends on the dosages, right? Let's say, I'll give you an example, right? Like a can of, say, the ones that we got everywhere, I think it's called Freaked, is about 160. It's the same size as a 500ml Monster, right? So it's 160 caffeine, 4 grams of citrulline, 2 grams of beta alanine as like the main ingredients. And then if I was to have a scoop of my pre-workout, which I'm using the anabolics one, which is called Loaded, that's 300 caffeine, 6.5 citrulline, 4.5 beta alanine. So if I was to have those two together, you've essentially just taken 460 caffeine, 10 grams of citrulline, and 6.5 of beta alanine.
I think
so is it too much?
My biggest issue with that is probably the beta alanine, to give you the tingles and the jitters and the itchy face. It would be way too much.
100%.
Way too much.
I've really noticed that a nice dose of citrulline for me, of beta alanine for me, is about 3 to 3.5 grams. In terms of like a comfortable feeling for training. And I know the pre-workout I have has 4, which is why I don't have a whole scoop. But I'm also a little bit caffeine sensitive, so I don't have a whole scoop for that reason as well. Citrulline, it's not something that I can feel the difference when I intake it in terms of like a specific physical feeling. Yeah. But you just that would be too much. It would just depend on the brands that you're using too, right? If you're using like a Muscle Nation, 120 gram caffeine, low dosage of the others, and a pre-workout drink, maybe now you're at the high end of a normal dose.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing if you're having like a reasonable pre-workout and a canned drink, I would suggest there'd probably be a reasonable come down. If you get home from training, you have a killer session, come home, and then for an hour and a half, you're like a nauseous zombie. It's probably that.
Oh, good. And it's really funny, and it's more caffeine related, but I've had some clients be like, I just feel like really dizzy later in the day, and I feel like maybe like blood pressure dropping, that kind of symptom. I was like, too much caffeine.
For sure. I'm sensitive, right? And I can say 100%. When I have a big hit of caffeine, I can definitely expect that exact feeling somewhere around 2 to 3 hours later.
Yeah.
100% of the time.
Yeah. And it's from that, it's too much caffeine that then makes you crash, lowers your blood pressure, makes you feel dizzy.
Yeah. And I'll say that the leaner I am and the deeper in prep I am, the more intense that feeling it becomes.
Yeah. How about you, Scotty? Anything you want to add to that?
I think it just depends on why you're taking what you're taking, and looking at the research behind like each individual supplement. Like in terms of caffeine, how much you're having, it's so individualized in terms of what we need. Like you just said, MG has his range of what he can tolerate. I know I have mine. The recommendation is normally 3 to 6 milligrams per kilo of body weight. Now, if you base that on that, say I'm on the top dosage of that, I go 6 megs per kilo body weight. If I'm 95 kilos, that's 560 milligrams of caffeine. I know if I have that, I'll be irritable, I'll be itchy, and it will fuck with me for about the next 10 hours. I'll get a headache afterwards. So that's the top end, but that is what all of the research, and they've done heaps of it on it, supports within that range. But if I have on the lower end 3 to 4 milligrams, if I'm having more like I don't even have 300. It's around 200 to 250. I feel like a lot more alert. My cognitive function is there. So just because that is what the literature suggests, that's the top end range. Everyone is individual and everyone's needs are different. But in terms of citrulline malate, having more of that's not really going to do you any harm. There's no real, like when you have beta alanine, that paresthesia effect that people notice that tingles.
Yeah.
Everyone's different with that. And the more you have of that over time, the more you acclimate to it. But a lot of people don't realize with beta alanine as well, that they don't actually understand why they're taking that. So you're taking beta alanine so that you can produce carnosine, and that helps as a buffering capacity. So when we work out and we're metabolizing part of the carbohydrate metabolism in terms of the way things are broken down, we start to get a buildup of hydrogen ions in the muscle. And so the theory behind it is that it helps to buffer some of that acidity within the muscle. So that's why we take it. But in terms of the dosage, and again, there's a lot of data to support whether you're taking it in the morning, in the afternoon, whether you split your dosage, it's like creatine. As long as that net dosage has been accrued and it needs to be consistently taken, it doesn't really make a difference. So I always say if people are really sensitive to that, then take 1.5, and then that can be it. Or if you've got someone that wants to take 3 milligrams, the biggest thing is that it just needs to be consistently done. So if you're really, like, to give you guys an idea, I don't take pre-workout, but I have both of these in my pre-workout, and I'll normally have a fat burner, not because it helps me liberate fat, but because it has some tyrosine in it and it has some caffeine, and the caffeine dosage is not as aggressive as, like, say, a pre-made pre-workout. And then I can supplement the amount of citrulline and the amount of beta-alanine that I want in it that I know will give me the result I need. And same thing, 2 to 3 grams of the beta-alanine is enough. But if I was sensitive, like I used to be, I used to split it up into 2 doses, and it doesn't make any difference at all.
Yeah, yeah.
But the people at the supplement store will usually not tell you that. They'll be like, it's got 4 grams of this and it's got that.
Of course.
But in reality, they probably don't even understand, like, from a physiology perspective, why you're taking that and the response that it's going to have within your body. So,
and the other thing I want to say, this is a PSA for all the people out there who are like, we just dry scoop, like you know, at the back of the bottle, right? It says, please consume this with 250 to 500 milliliters of water, right? Mm-hmm. That is for a reason, right? That is to try and avoid GI distress. So if you're someone who dry scoops and then, like, you also have gut issues, and there may be some correlation between, your dry scooping of those ingredients without dilution in water.
Yeah.
So just have your pre-workout with water. I know it's cool to, like, throw a scoop down and just have a sip, but it's those supplements are created and are meant to be diluted with a certain amount of liquid to not cause GI distress.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a funny one. I've never dry scooped and not looking at doing it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I only really started using pre-workout towards the end of prep, to be honest. And I was never one to use pre-workout, and I only started using it towards the end of prep. And I think it did help a little bit. But then I think maybe that was a little bit in my head too.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah. Well, your sort of pre/intra was a shot of coffee with a little bit of protein powder, right?
That's right. That's what I did for most of my prep.
So, like, for you, that was probably 80 milligrams of caffeine and a little bit of protein powder for some calories while you train. But you pretty much got through your whole prep on that.
That's right. Yeah, I only did it towards the end.
I remember you making it up.
It was only because I got told to buy some pre-workout for comp day, so I bought it a couple of weeks beforehand. I was like, maybe I'm going to run this to see if it affects my gut, and I tried it during training, and then I just left it in.
Yeah, and it became slightly effective, and anything you can get it when you're that deep down the rabbit hole, you're going to take it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and the calories were non-existent, so
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Actually, this is a really good point to jump on to the next question, because the next question was about citrulline, right? And taking it on comp day for vascularity in compared to sodium. So maybe, Scotty, you might want to talk about that. Would you take it instead of with?
They don't have opposing results. They don't have opposing effects, I should say. So each serves a purpose. Sodium, in terms of the dosage and how we employ it, sodium needs to be very, as we know, it stays very consistent throughout the diet. We take it in when we're ingesting all of our food. So even throughout the morning when you're eating your meals, typically you'll have the sodium dosage allocated to that meal so that you know you're getting the right amount. But again, as we've spoken about, if you are tracking your electrolyte, and both you boys can attest to this, you both track your electrolyte intakes now, and that's something that, you know, MT, you sort of learned firsthand with your first show, and you know, you'll be forever aware of, and probably even more on top of with your own athletes moving forward, that if that is very consistent throughout the entirety of your bodybuilding endeavors, in season, off season, then it's really easy to be able to use sodium to get an advantageous result in terms of putting in a more acute dose within a shorter window of time to increase blood pressure. Again, this is only going to work. You've got someone that's shredded. If you're 5 kilos over stage weight, you can inject all the sodium and citrulline that you want.
But unless you mix it with vodka, it's not effective.
It's not going to elicit the result. But in terms of citrulline, we'll typically only start to tip that in when we're starting to get close to start pumping up, when we're maybe an hour out from the show, and potentially even in between divisions. Whereas sodium is going to stay basically consistent throughout the day, but especially with our carbohydrate meals. And also to ensure, obviously, when we're taking in water, we want to make sure that we're not really mucking around with our fluid balance levels. You know, a lot of people think if you just stop drinking sodium, it's an easier way to try and dry out a little bit more. But what happens is, as again we've spoken about numerous times, if you try and dilute blood sodium levels, all that will happen is your body will release a hormone that makes you reabsorb sodium, and where sodium goes, water follows. So all you'll do is you'll take water intracellularly and you'll stick it in that extracellular layer where you don't want it to go, to try and make sure you have the right fluid balance. So you can never outsmart your body in that sense. Yeah. And again, you shouldn't be doing anything radical with sodium. I don't know if you can hear that in the background.
Hashtag that.
You can't really do anything drastic. Yeah. There'll be something with YouTube that's broken. With sodium, you shouldn't need to do anything drastic because it should be consistent all throughout the day. And then as we start to get closer and we put in a large acute dose, again, when you've got someone that's super shredded, you guys have seen it firsthand, everything just comes to life a little bit more. You know, our ability to be able to pump up is greater. And again, we also need sodium for our muscles to be able to contract. So that's another reason why we obviously wouldn't limit it and why we keep it consistent. But yeah, hopefully that answers that. I'm going to have to duck out one more second.
I think the biggest point there is, you know, sodium is more than just trying to get vascular, right? Sodium it's an electrolyte. It helps with blood flow, shuttling carbohydrates into the muscle, and it helps with fluid balance, right? So I'm just saying, Scotty, that sodium is more than just about vascularity. Sodium's about blood flow. It's about shuttling carbohydrates into the muscle. It's about fluid balance. Sodium has a lot of aspects that we use it for, not just vascularity, whereas citrulline only has a couple of things that we use it for, right? So
yeah, citrulline's there to improve vasodilation. That's right.
Yeah, so citrulline, is about that, right? So we would never pick one or the other. We'd actually utilize both, right? Sure. So I think that's the point there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as you said, it's not, people think that sodium is there to just get vascular. That is a byproduct of it. But typically you look at when people tend to pull carbohydrate, it's usually around the last couple of days, or if they when people tend to pull sodium to get that manipulation of fluid balance, which we've discussed that you can't get, it's typically around the time that they're also trying to load carbohydrate. But again, if we go back, and not to get too airy-fairy with science, but to get across, in order to be able to partition that carbohydrate, to get across that first membrane, that first glucose transporter is sodium dependent. That sodium-linked glucose transporter. So you need sodium within circulation to be able to partition that carbohydrate. Just like you also need water to be able to partition that carbohydrate. And again, we've spoken about your body is so smart. If you stop consuming sodium, then all you will do is you'll reabsorb sodium. Mm-hmm. So water will come from somewhere where you have it to go to somewhere where you need it in order to dilute blood plasma osmolality. And then if you're having heaps and heaps of sodium, guess what happens when you go to the bathroom? you'll
Yeah. You want to?
Did you guys freeze that? Or are you just staring
Yeah,
at
you
blank?
want to repeat that, Scotty, because I think we froze. I think we all
I
froze.
think it froze. Yeah. So what I was saying is, if you stop consuming sodium, all that will happen is that you will just reabsorb more sodium. And if you try and push shitloads of it, and there's too much within circulation, then all that will happen is that you will excrete more sodium to be able to maintain that fluid balance, that level of equilibrium that your body needs to have. Because again, your kidneys do a tremendous job of managing that on a minute by minute basis. So your body, again, it's so smart. So when you try and think that you can cheat sheet your way around it and manipulate water to go somewhere where you want it, and perhaps remove it from where you don't want it, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the end of the day, if you get shredded enough, you shouldn't need to play around with any of those things. And again, bearing in mind, you need sodium. And if you also try and say you've got people when they do a water load, for example, that can also be deleterious to the physique because, again, you're diluting blood sodium levels because you're taking in heaps and heaps of water, which can make it difficult. If your blood sodium levels are lower, it can make it difficult if you've got less sodium in circulation. Again, if you're trying to partition carbohydrate, that's not going to work very well for you. And then you're also going to excrete more potassium as a result of, again, trying to maintain that balance. And so then if you're depleting potassium as a result of you not having enough sodium, and then when you stop and you start putting one in, and again, your ratios aren't right, you're fucking around with your electrolytes.
Yep.
And it's a recipe for disaster. So just keep fluid consistent, keep your sodium consistent. You put an acute dose in right around the time that you're ready to rock. And potassium, again, will typically, and again, you boys will know, we'll typically put a little bit more potassium in the day before because, and you guys will both know that, and I'll explain why we do that, so that we know we're going to tip in a little bit more sodium the next day. So we're essentially getting your body ready for that to happen, so that when that happens, we can correct that fluid balance. And
then we have potassium post-show because we've just taken in so much sodium on show day.
Exactly right. And the first thing you do when you get off, you're taking in potassium, banana, coconut water, and you're taking in a ton of water because at that point in time, your blood sodium levels will be super, super high. So we want to try and get that back to baseline. And that's why when people are like, oh, I woke up the next day and I was like 6 or 7 kilos heavier, a lot of the time it's because they've got so much sodium in circulation, and that can be because they've gone for a burger and this and that, and they think that they've gained all this fat, but in reality, like we just said, where sodium goes, water follows. Mm-hmm. And the reason that you reabsorb that water is so that you can dilute those blood sodium levels so that you can get back to baseline.
Yeah.
When in reality, all you have to do is just keep your electrolyte levels consistent.
Yeah. And people drink a ton of water post-show as well, so that weight jump's just like so artificial.
Yeah, or they go out for a meal, and then that meal has even more sodium, so they're just loaded on even more sodium, which then that's when you get that retention there because it doesn't have a good balance, right?
But this is also why you see these people who think they can trick the body and they fuck around and they pull sodium trying to get leaner, and then they're flat and they can't get a pump because we've spoken about why, and obviously we rely on that. With the sodium-potassium pump is extremely important in the human body. And then afterwards, they'll go out and they'll have a big feed and they'll consume sodium, they'll consume some water. And it's like, I just filled out straight away, when they're like, it was the burger that did it. When in reality, it wasn't. You just gave your body some electrolytes and some fluid, which is what it needed.
Yeah.
And then your physique just came back to life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So if anyone's listening out there, the one thing that you don't, hopefully this is what we can be known for. Don't fuck around with your electrolytes. Keep them consistent. And if they're consistent and you get super shredded and you push in that acute dose of sodium around that time when you are in fact obviously about to get ready to get on stage, then you will see a really nice response. But again, if you're super shredded, you're talking about adding an extra maybe 5% to the look because you're already going to be vascular anyway. It's not like I went from 70 to 110 because I took these magic, sodium pills. It doesn't work like that.
And I think that's what people need to understand is, firstly, throughout peak week, throughout your comp, you should be drinking enough water, having enough sodium, and having enough potassium, right? then if you don't know what the fuck you're doing, don't do anything, right? At all. Even up until show day, don't do nothing. If you don't know what you're doing, don't touch it. The only reason why we do slight manipulations the day before and the day of is because firstly, we know what we're doing, right? And the second thing is we're trying to get that extra couple of percentage out of that physique, right? But if you have no idea what you're doing, don't chase that extra percent when you can go into the negative, right? And you can make it worse. So have enough of all three, all the way through your prep, all the way through peak week, all the way through show day, and don't change one thing if you don't know what you're doing. If you've got a coach that knows what they're doing, or you're doing your own prep and you know what you're doing, then there'll only be slight manipulations at the end. If you don't know what you're doing, don't touch it, because you're just going to stuff yourself up to try to get that extra couple of percentage out on the show day.
Maybe we should.
And the chances are you probably look good in your bathroom when you're flexing, doing your post-training selfie. You would have looked probably 95 or 96% if you're ready to rock. So that will be better than, like we just said, chasing that last little bit if you're not aware of what you're doing and the response that you're going to get. If you, as we always go back to programming 101, if you can't justify why you're doing what you're doing, then you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
And that also goes to alcohol. For those people that think, oh, take alcohol to dry out. That's an even fucking dumber thing that you can be doing.
Here we go. He's going. Here we go. Yes. I love this. Go, Scotty.
Because as soon as you start to onboard alcohol and you've got ethanol in your bloodstream, your body cannot use the substrates that you put in. It's not going to be able to break down and metabolize carbohydrate. So that carbohydrate that you might have put into circulation that hasn't quite all the way been partitioned, as soon as you start drinking alcohol, bang, gone.
Yeah. No,
again, your body's it doesn't like alcohol. So it will do whatever it needs to. You have a system, alcohol dehydrogenase, that will get rid of that. And once that ethanol has left your bloodstream, then it can metabolize and it can start to utilize those substrates. So alcohol to dry out is also a massive no.
Yeah. We should do an episode on comp prep myths. We should do an episode on comp prep myths and get Scotty to break them all down and just see how angry we can get him within 1 hour. Look at him, he's getting out of his chair.
It's not that you don't really need, if you've got someone that's shredded, focus on getting really, really lean. Get yourself into great condition and then just keep things really simplistic. Everyone thinks that there's all these crazy manipulations in order to peak optimally, when in reality, it's not. You're just keeping things very consistent. Again, on show day, you're only really pushing in large amounts of carbohydrate if you have to. In an ideal world, I'll try and feed someone a minimal amount if I can, because it's less food in their GI tract. Ideally, I've topped them up from the day before. And if you've got complete muscle glycogen saturation from the night before, and let's be honest, as soon as we get out of town on the night before, you're not moving, you're not doing anything.
Yeah.
So everything is there. All you got to do is turn on the switch. You just got to start drinking a little bit of water, start pumping up, and then boom, you're ready to go. But if someone wakes up and they're a little bit flatter for whatever reason, everyone's individual and they might burn through a bit of extra carbohydrate and they've got more room to fill out, then sure, we'll push more in. But show day, we want to be able to give them the most minimal amount, because ideally, we've already filled up the tanks the night before.
Yeah.
And again, that carbohydrate doesn't go anywhere. If you've got that glycogen saturation, it's there, it's primed, and it's ready to rock. All you got to do is turn it on.
Yeah, on show day, you should not be carb loading. That should all be done. There should be like a little bit of carbs.
The only caveat would be, like we've spoken about, if you've got someone that you've literally, you said, I'm going to push it to the last day to get that little bit longer. And then again, if you were going to do that, you would look at employing a carbohydrate protocol and even potentially increase caffeine, because there's some good research to support that. I think it's around 8 milligrams of caffeine with 1.2 grams per kilo of body weight carbohydrate, split over a 4-hour period. So if that was, let's say that if from 100 kilos, and we're talking about 800 milligrams of caffeine, 400 every 2 hours over a 4-hour period, with that dosage of carbohydrate has been shown to top up muscle glycogen stores faster. But that's getting a little bit off topic. But that was the only that was the only caveat to that where we would do that. Otherwise, in an ideal world, we're ready early. We've filled up the tanks on a Friday night. The latest, ideally Friday night's meal's pretty light as well, because we've done our work earlier in the day. And then the next day, You're just going to cruise. A little bit of food, that's all you need, the most minute amount. Ideally, we're just using fats at this point to just, again, keep everything where it needs to be. And then when we need to flip the on switch, we do it.
Love it. This stuff makes me excited, man. I can't wait for season 8.
Yeah, well, we're close, right? Like, we're now getting to a point where, what are we, between 7 and 18 weeks out between sort of first and last shows.
Yeah.
So we're back in game time period.
I love it.
Yeah, it's awesome, man.
Right.
So we've just come back from half time and we're ready.
As a coach, when you get them in, like, you remember that Friday, the day before your big show, and you come in, the excitement around that, because you know that you are going to see some pretty cool changes in a 24-hour period because of everything that's been done the first few days prior, but also when you've done all the work the last 30 weeks to get shredded. And it's pretty cool to see what the human body is physically capable of and just some of those minor tweaks. But it definitely excites the levels for
Harvey!
Yes.
Yes, Harvey! Here he is, the king.
Say hi to the boys.
Hey, Harvey.
Hey.
What a legend. Yes, what a
Here's
legend.
He's going all shy.
No,
He's
he's not
ready for
shy.
Daddy to finish up.
He's never
Yeah.
shy.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap it up there, boys.
No, it's exciting, man. It's going to be good.
Let's do it. All right. Well, let's wrap it up there. It's good to see
Yep.
Harvey at the end.
That's it.
Give him a fist bump, Harvey.
Harvey, who's got bigger muscles? Who's got bigger muscles, you or Dad? You or Dad? Show me your
Give us a
muscles.
flex,
Got
Harvey.
big muscles, Harvey.
Can you
You
do
got
that?
big muscles, don't you?
Yeah,
I
all
was gonna say
right.
you gotta say double
What's
fist
the
bump.
flex?
That's it. Oh, what a man. Oh, yeah.
Not talking, just fist pumping.
That's all right.
There
We'll
we
take
go.
it, bro. We'll take it.
All right, boys.
Yeah.
Hey,
All right,
Scotty,
boys.
Scotty, imagine the day you get
Hey,
to.
fine.
Hey, Scotty, you get to have that chat with Harvey where you go, Harvey, it's time for you to come with us for Souvs.
Yeah. Are you keen on coming for a Souv?
Do you want a Souvlaki?
Have you had a Souvlaki?
Yeah.
You don't want one, or you want to have a Souvlaki?
No, he wants one.
I
Do you know
I
what Harvey
flex
loves?
peanut.
Harvey loves the Maximus Great electrolyte drink, the sports drink I have.
Oh,
You
so
drink
do I,
that
man. Who
before,
doesn't?
Grape juice.
Grape juice.
Yeah, he loves grape.
Grape juice.
Yeah. Great for gains.
Yeah.
I
All right, boys. Let's wrap it up.
All right, boys. Take care. Good to see you, Scotty. I'll see you double Friday, lunch
Yes.
and dinner.
Yes, done.
Yeah, what time is the training session? 12?
Well, anytime onwards from 12 that you can get there.
Yeah, sweet.
All right.
Done.
All right, boys. See you later.
See you, boys.
Ciao, ciao.